Good afternoon, Sean Childs, fantasy analyst .substack.com. Also on uh, fantasy on SI, my weekly waiver wire for the NFBC main event. Unfortunately, the writing part, I just haven't been able to uh, catch up and be ready to do it on Saturday because I've been behind on my other stuff, doing football teams and whatever else outside of writing and stuff like that. So uh, the the video saves me a little bit of time. It's kind of a little rush through talking about it because you kind of learn on the fly. But at least when I write the waiver wire for fantasy on SI, it's more for a 12 teamer. But at least I've looked at a lot of names that are potentially free agent. Both I probably didn't do a good enough job on the pitching side of the 12 team yesterday, digging down names, but I'll catch up on this, and the free agent options in 15 teams will be a lot less. So same thing as in the past. I'm going to go over to bring up the. Sorry, I'm going to get the thing here. Sorry, get my screen up. I'm going to go through the catcher pool in last week, and I'm going to same thing. I'm going to sort this by the catcher position, and I will use the last week's at bats, week 9, to kind of show if I sort by at bats, if anybody else like Victor Carantini shows up at 5% owned, so he's getting more at bats. So it shows you something. But before I go to that, I just looked at this main event that I'm in. Third place was a school team, underachieving, back end of their starting rotation. Was fortunate to pick up Logan Henderson after he was dropped. Kind of feel like I got 1.5 closes. Finnegan, little shoulder injuries, but he's done pretty well. But when you're looking at your weekly teams, results, how's my team doing? Ideally, you'd like to have over 300 bats, which is really difficult. You really kind of need your catchers to kind of play every day or 4 or 5 times a week, and hit higher in the lineup, and then everybody else. But there was a few rainouts. Atlanta was rained out, and Red Sox and some other games, so could be down. And this is with one game to go, so I have 251 at bats going into today. I think the school pitched a complete game, 2 hitters, struck out 13, so it was a really good number. So when you're looking at the pitching numbers, I only had 47. I don't know if the screen goes that low, but I only had 47 strikeouts for the week so far. I don't know if I really kind of do a bad job of kind of keeping track who's pitching each day because you got so many teams and stuff like that. But, ideally you'd like to get about 53, 54 strikeouts, 4 wins, probably like 3 saves would be ideal, get you on pace to get to 78. And you would like to, ERA and WHIP to take care of themselves. But when you have bad starts, I had AJ Smith-Shawver really kind of blew up this week. Get a bad outing. So he's probably on the line where he isn't going to be in the lineup every week. And then I got a couple other pitchers on the bench that can potentially help, but some of them are struggling. But at the end of the week of the offense, you want about 42, 43 runs. 11 home runs would you be holding serve, 41 RBIs, maybe 7 steals. So if you see those numbers and you did it for the week, you kind of hit your goal. And if you did that every week of the year, you'd probably be in the top 20% in every category. The trick is that it doesn't flow that way, and you're going to have some 5 home run weeks, 2 steal weeks, but can you make up to it with 13 steals and 20 home runs? So this team's offense is really it should be pretty good because it was a draft that the offense kind of got pushed back. I took Alonso in the 3rd round in front of Matt Olson, and he slid all the way to the 4th round. And I have Turkelson with his team, so I have 3 pretty good power base hitters. Now, can I get enough speed? My batting average is a really kind of a problem out of the gate. I'm down the bottom of the league. McLean's really struggled, and Christian Yelich I think he's over 200 now, but kind of hurting me. So that's going to be an area of concern for this team and, where it ends up. But I think the rest of the offensive categories will be pretty good. And I think the pitching stats will be okay eventually. And sometimes even when I'm talking about pitching, if you have a 3.5 ERA for the year and your whip's like 1.17, 1.16, eventually, if you can just hold that area, people are going to back into you and back up behind you. So you don't necessarily, even though your pitching struggled a little bit and went down and you lost some points, you just got to maintain and hopefully progress. So just it's a checklist when you look at your team, like am I getting enough at bats, and are my other players good enough? But I mean, I like this team's lineup. Only got one hitter on the bench, but I don't have any injuries this week, so I don't know what will happen. But so back over the catcher position, Victor Caratini for Houston. He's got a few more bats with Yordan Alvarez injured. He's been able to capitalize on that because Diaz has shifted over to DH, and he's done pretty good the last 2 or 3 weeks. If I just go to the weekly thing, and I think he can probably squeeze up, squeeze out one more week out of him. He's got 19 at bats last week, 20 at bats this week going into today. He's got a home run in 3 of the last 4 week periods. I do have him in the AL auction as a second catcher, so I'm kind of happy with that. The RBI production, only 5 RBIs isn't that great, and then in here the runs aren't that great. So like if a guy's going to be a 50-50 guy, if you got a home run, 2 RBIs, and 2 runs, is 26. Basically, there's 26 a full periods for baseball, roughly. So that's if they get 2 RBIs, 2 runs, that's 52. So you'd be a little bit higher than that. You want. If you got 1 home run every other week, that would be pretty good too. So I think this guy will be, because he doesn't have a clear path to starting long term, that he will only cost a couple of dollars, and he falls into the flier category. So in a 15-team league, he's definitely viable if somebody's looking to cover an injury, or if they have somebody underachieving at the second catcher. The Red Sox catcher Carlos Neves, or I haven't really followed him too close. I know that Wong was supposed to be back like last week or so. And he is back, but he's really not doing much, I guess. So let me see. Just want to double check, because when you don't have a player, so Wong comes back, misses some time, sits out. He's not, hasn't really kind of get rolling. Empty, it's 7 for 47. So the other player, the other catcher, is taking advantage of the opportunity, and he has 3 consecutive good weeks. He has a home run in 5 of the last 6 waiver periods, and he's progressing for sure. In for the season, 44 strikeouts over 130 at bats. It's kind of high. So plate appearances, you might have 148 or so. Then by he's got 15 walks, say 145. So his strikeout rate's kind of. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong line. I'm looking at the projected thing. All right, sorry, 35 strikeouts with 13 walks. So about 1 out of 4, 25%. It's not that as bad. It's not as bad as it looks as the other projected thing. So sorry about that. Hitting 290. So he is definitely outplaying Wong, and he's viable, and he is a player that is 60% owned, but still long term that Wong could creep back into the equation. So I would think that play wise, how he's playing, I think he may be in that like E-class, E-class token bids area, where he'd be like $20, a little over 20 if you really need him. If you think you're just trying to rotate somebody in, and maybe have another catcher that's kind of stalling, I would think that he would be in that area. Diaz, I haven't followed too close for San Diego. I'm still Luis Capizano is the guy that's still waiting for him to kind of get a chance in the majors, and I doubt he will. But just really kind of empty stats for Diaz, not player of interest. Catcher position is really tricky. Patrick Bailey, I know that a friend of mine has him in a league, and his other partner would desperately like him to put him on the mat and strike out. Last 3 weeks, really just 1 home run all year. Runs and RBIs probably not that bad for a second catcher over the last 6 periods or so. On pace for, he's probably on pace to be close to a 45 to 50 run RBI guy. Too many strikeouts. Yeah, he's definitely a guy that you want to kind of cut to the curb, even if you have him in a league. So I wouldn't be interested in him. Still in the think that Jansen will bounce back at 39% owned. A little bit, he's got a home run back-to-back weeks. 8 for his last 25. That's pretty good. The runs and RBIs are okay, but he's a fly ball hitter. He's underachieved where he's expectation right now. He's only hitting 198. The walks are fine, and the strikeouts aren't that bad, considering he probably has 126 plate appearances. So pretty good approach. So I think, eventually Jansen's going to have some value, and I think that he's kind of works as especially in a 50-team format, I think he works as a catcher too, especially for somebody else that grabs him now rather than rode him and got the bad start of the year with a limited production through the first third of the year. Edgar Quero is really not getting it done. He's 0 for 9, and it's really I wrote a couple times this week about Teal for the White Sox. I'm sorry, but he's a player that's really kind of on the move, and he had I think an 18-game hitting streak going into last night, and I didn't look at it, but so he went 0 for 3, so he had his hitting streak broken, but he had back-to-back 3 for 4 nights, and he had 3 home runs, six runs, 5 RBIs, and he's just really progressing where he belongs in the majors. So I could see based on the other catcher for the White Sox struggling over 9, I could see those two flipping. At the same time, I can't dismiss Corey Lee was playing a little bit better too. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, about a 10-game hitting streak, at AAA, so he could actually get to the majors too, and maybe even push the other backup catcher to the bench. So, but he's playing pretty well for the year at AAA. He's got 2 home run, 8 RBIs, hitting 325, above his major league profile, but still a guy that hit 12 home runs last year and is helpful. So I think it could be a flip there. So he's probably in the player pool for sure, but still too early without some news. And I'm not looking at the news right now because I did look before I started doing this to see if anything stood out. So I think that's what's going on there. So something to pay attention to. So the Quero guy first, I think he's a cut this week. Or somebody that you want to flip, and really there's not really anybody else that stands out as far as that. I'm just going to go for the full ownership just in case somebody that's injured is Carson Kelly. So the couple catchers banged up for the Cubs, and they sent the other guy, the Ballesteros guy, I think his name is. They sent him back to the minors, and he could get called back up because of the other 2 guys are kind of banged up, and he's in the minors. He's 6 for 26, but he's more of a DH option, but he has a pretty good bat, and he's hitting 344 this year. So if he got cut back in the player pool, and I will just sort through that just to make sure I'm not missing his name buried somewhere. So he's 56. He's a free agent, 44% of leagues. You could see him getting dropped, but Carson Kelly a little banged up. Don't know what that is for sure. I can click on that rather than just glossing over it. Illness day to day, so it's not something major. But with Amaya getting put on the IL, that they could potentially call up another catcher there, and he could be developed into a reasonable. McGuire's nothing special for. That's who they called up. Maybe they have to wait the 10 days. I guess they put somebody on the IL. They could have called them up. But so that's probably about it at the catcher position. There's really not much to go on. First base continues to be a position that's just really challenging to find an upgrade in power. We got 100% owned, 100% owned, 97%. So Encarnacion Strand, he started a rehab assignment. He's a free agent at 23%. I know that they were going to send him out. I don't know where he is. I have him on some teams, so I might as well, do my own homework before I do the waiver wire. So he's, let's see, he's in rookie ball. He's 2 for 7 with a run and 2 RBIs and 3 strikeouts. So they just put him in. It's a minor league complex in Florida or something, or Arizona, one of the two. So he'll progress in a couple games and get pushed probably from rookie ball or their complex to AAA. So if you're looking for some power, Cincinnati's a little banged up, and I think he's viable, and I cut him in. I think this league he's in the free agent pool, but that was because I had the 3 first basemen. I ended up cutting him last week because I needed the extra roster spot, and most likely I wasn't going to play him. So 77% owned. Wegeman guy for Miami has played first base. He also qualifies at outfield. He's played a lot better recently over the last week. He doesn't have a really high profile where I think he's a long-term answer at first base, but he's probably a bridge player. when he's kind of playing all right. So he's got let's say over the last 8 games, he's 12 for 32, 5 runs, 1 home run, 6 RBIs, only 5 strikeouts. He's on the move pretty much. Last year he had a pretty good run at AAA where he had 320 over 100 at bats with 3 home runs, 14 RBIs. A little better at AA with 14 home runs. But he's a player that is going to give you some bats. He has some speed on his resume earlier, and he does qualify at outfield. I wouldn't spend a lot for this type of player because I'm not sure what the length of his opportunity will be. But the teens to 20 depend on team need and what you really thought of him long term. I would think of it, that way for him. But he's not really. He's only 30% owned. Talese didn't hit a home run. He's kind of progressing the last couple of weeks, where he had 2 home runs back-to-back week. But if you need a power at first base and you had to slide him in, I think that he's a guy that could hit a home run for a week and maybe give you a couple of RBIs and have one big game. We got 2, 4, 6 last 7 periods. He's got 6 home runs. Just below par in the runs and RBIs. He did have one week where he had 7 and 5. So if you catch him at the right time, but he's viable if you need to bridge somebody for the week. And I think he's pretty much 30% free agent. He's a player that he just would be relatively cheap because he's just not in there and kind of banging it. Jack, was it Caglione? I guess I got a phone call that I was pronouncing this guy's wrong, but he said I think he's really on fire and he's been really hot at AA and AAA, and Kansas City's almost forcing their hand to get call him up. He was really hot at AA. They promoted him to AAA, and I think he has a home run in 3 straight games. And just what are you waiting for, Kansas City? You're trying to make a run here. He's got 3 home runs, 7 RBIs, 3 for 12. Only struck out 2 times. Not kill it in batting average, but the power. Hit 316 at AA, 9 home runs, 44 RBIs, 29 runs. He's a first round draft pick. He's a stud. He's 61% free agent, but that means in the main event, most likely he didn't get drafted. But if he's in the free agent pool in the league and he slipped through the cracks, or even a 12-team or a home league, I think I would be interested in him for sure as a buy and hold, and we'll see what happens. Cody Clemens hit a home run, I think yesterday. I'm not sure. Games. Yeah, he hit a home run yesterday, but he's inconsistent playing time. Played on the 21st or 24th, so too many days off. He does have a hitting streak, a 6-game hitting streak here, 2 home runs, so it's just about playing time. But kind of messy over Minnesota, not really much there. I'm trying to think if somebody else is at first base. So let me just go back to the sort by the 100% owned for the not by the at bats. Let's see if there's somebody else that. Yeah, there's really not much at first base. So it's just tough out. The only other person that's probably intriguing that's probably not a free agent, and Miguel Vargas, got hot last week, got picked up, but I think he needs a couple more games at first base. He's going into yesterday, I think he had six games at first base, and he's playing first base. So let's see how many games he's got. Vargas, he has 7 games, so 3 more games will qualify at first. So in a 12-team league, he could be a guy that could play corner and help a 12-team league like that. And he's not didn't play as well this week, but he's definitely trending higher. Or 6 home runs. Like to see him run a little bit more. If based on his playing time, he could have 540 at bats, 63 runs, 66 RBIs, 18 home runs, 3 steals. I think the steals would go up. The batting average, the approach looks pretty good. So I think his production, where he'd probably be in the 70s in runs and RBIs, and I could see his steals going from between the 7 to 10 area. So, but in the 15-team main event, I don't think he will be in the free agent pool in many leagues. So second base, same thing. We'll sort by at bats and see if there's somebody else. Nick Sogard, I just, is just not a player that I would even consider. He's playing with Boston, and just, is getting more at bats, but I'm not convinced. Durbin got cut and 32% of main events. Played much better over the last week or so. 8 for 22. I think he didn't have any hits the previous. Let me just look at that quick. Previous week period, it was 0 for 14. So 8 for 28, 8 for 22 this period. 3 runs, 3 RBIs, and 3 steals. And you kind of want it from steals. A guy that could hit maybe 10 home runs. So you're going to pick him up as a cut. And I think that he will be better than he has been. And his strikeouts aren't bad for the season. When you look at his approach, he's 10 strikeouts and 105 at bats, 5 walks. Kind of a free swinger. But the other numbers, he should have an improvement. I would think that he's viable. I don't think the cost will be a lot less because the buzz is off. And if you can chase some, if you're chasing speed, I think that he kind of fits the profile. Michael Massey hit a home run last week. Just I cut him in the league. He just hasn't. He's underperformed, and he's just a guy that's going to cost $1 or $2. And he just thought he'd be a better player. At 15 and 14 home runs this year, he's got 2. Strikeouts 28, not bad, not enough walks, but just not really kind of doing it at the plate. But he's a player that had double-digit home runs, so he got stuck. You could put him in, and I wouldn't. Santiago Espinal. He's a guy that just doesn't do enough. I talked about him a little bit last week, but weekly, no home runs in 5, 6 all year. A little bit of RBIs, not really any speed. So maybe give you some at bats, and you feel like you're doing better, but he's not really going to give you much. Hitting 270 for the year. The approach is okay, but not helping you really in the home runs. He's not the type of player that I would ever roster in the main event. Maybe for a week if I had him in a thread line and I missed on something. Let's see, Clement for Toronto. I think he had a home run this week too. Weekly, yeah, he had a home run. I think that was, So he's just not getting enough at bats for he's 3 for 16. He played a little bit more the 2 previous weeks. He's only got 1 home run a year. Last year he's a little bit better. He had 12 home runs over 400 at bats, but approach isn't a bad 21 Ks, but not really. Just more of a bridge player in a 15-team league. You sometimes just survive and put these players in, and you just want to kind of make it to the next week and hopefully find somebody that has more value. Sosa's done pretty good for the White Sox. He's 60% free agent. Weekly, he's 7 for 14. He got a home run, 5 RBIs. The last 2 waiver periods, 5 for 15, 6 for 23, but 1 home run in one of those. Not much production, but a decent bat, but just not a high ceiling player. A little bigger guy, 5'9", 210. Suggests that he might have a little more power, but just doesn't have the approach and doesn't have the resume to kind of support enough speed or even a push through and power. So kind of just a bridge player. And Token, same thing. You're looking for somebody just to fill in. Mead is kind of interesting. He's a free agent in all the leagues, and he's been getting a little more playing time for Tampa Bay. He's got a 6-game hitting streak, and he's got a home run back-to-back games going into today. And he's a guy that had pretty good pedigree. 6'1", 225. He thought he'd be a better player, and he's a decent prospect. And let me just look at their depth chart to see what's going on, why he's kind of sliding into more at bats. Let's see, Tampa Bay. So he's Diaz is playing, DH. So Aranda and Mead, and I guess So he's playing basically first base or second base. And let's see what he's playing per game. So he's got 15 games at first base, 8 at second, 3 at third. So he's probably the guy that's probably has the higher ceiling than Aranda. Aranda kind of showed something early, but he'd been a little more quiet over his last few games. All right, I sorted it on the wrong thing here. Aranda's 4 for his last 29 with 11 strikeouts. So Mead's kind of stealing playing time from him. So I think that Mead is a player that potentially could hit, and he does have a higher ceiling for me. In a couple of years ago, I'll just go back, and I just want to same thing, talk about the player's stats without, trying to, have total recall. So last year he had 364 at bats at AAA, hit 288, 13 home runs, 11 steals, nice balanced player. Didn't kill it. The runs were probably better than the other categories with RBIs. But I think he's a player that should improve. He has enough experience at AAA. I'm just going to back it all the way out and just to see where, what he's done at AAA. He's got 685 at bats. I don't know why this thing's in my way here. 112 runs, 26 home runs, 102 RBIs, 16 steals. So, that's probably, a season and a third or maybe a quarter. So he's a pretty good player. I mean, AL only league, if he's in free agent pool, I would definitely pick him up. And I think the main event, he's, playing well, and he's definitely, if you're looking for somebody that can help at first base, probably missed him when I was looking at the other thing because he was the first baseman because he was a 0% owned, but he's definitely a player of interest this week. Probably I'd be bulling if I was hurting at first base or corner. I'd play a little bit higher, maybe 20 to 30 for him because I think he could be a long-term player that could help. Let's see here. Harris is fading. Morels continues to do nothing. Hamilton kind of messy. They called up Michael Mayer for the Red Sox, but he qualifies at short only. Mateo stole some bases. He got a little bumper playing time, but I don't think it's it's not enough. Steals are okay. He's got 9, strikes out too much. But really not. Yeah, I just wanted the other short. Yeah, I think it's the other player for Tampa Bay plays shortstop, but I'm just not seeing anybody else that's really kind of standing out there. Shortstop, same thing with at bats. Just going down. Clement, we already talked about him a little bit. Farmer's just a fill-in player. Sosa, just nothing there. Nick Allen, nothing. The Braves really need something, upgrade at shortstop. They're just getting no production. Lawler's really a guy that'll probably get cut more 0 for 5. They're just not giving enough at bats. He hasn't got a hit. So the Red Sox called up Marcelo Mayer, yesterday in the second half of the doubleheader. Went 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. He's played really, really well at AAA, but how long is Bregman going to be out, and will Mayer hit the stick in the majors? And I think that so Bregman and it's a strain, says significant, so he could miss, maybe a month or maybe more, but I don't know for sure. But so that's a pretty good opportunity for Mayer to get at bats. But is he a guy that's a difference maker? And that's really challenging. The Red Sox are still struggling at first base. So if somebody hits, if he hits, because he was actually going to slide over to second base, and Campbell was going to see some playing time at first base. So he looked like he was going to stay here anyway. So he has an opportunity to prove himself. And he played really well earlier this year at AAA, but he's kind of fallen off a little bit. But 9 home runs, over 170 at bats, 43 RBIs, kind of stands out. He only hit in 265, doesn't really offer much speed, but he did have 13 steals last year. So, but 307 in Double A last year, over 300 bats, 8 home runs. Approach was okay. But what is this type of player, worth? I don't think he's a difference maker in power. I think the average will be neutral to negative out of the gate. Probably if I lost Bregman or if I needed a second baseman, maybe $50 to $80 if you have a lot of free agent money. If you're kind of, at the back end of the pool and you've got 400 or less and you don't really have a glaring issue, I don't think that I would push all in. But he definitely has talent and upside at 22 years old. It's just a matter of, how long does it take him to hit his stride? And we saw Kurtz, kind of struggle, and he's kind of hit some home runs this week and showing that he has more value. But the same thing with Lawler. Lawler was like, all around prospect, looked to have a lot higher ceiling, but not as clear a path as Mayer. But Lawler didn't even get a chance for the Arizona, and he's, probably going to be a tough guy to carry. So Mayer's a guy. I don't think that I have issues at shortstop. So if you're in my league, I won't be bidding on him, so you don't have to worry about me. And I'm probably broke anyway, so I don't think that's a problem. Rick Waldman got sent down. They Tampa Bay. That's what I was going to say. I think they sent Kim on a rehab assignment. I think, yeah, he's so he's going to start a rehab assignment. So he'll be away a couple weeks away. So he is going to be a free agent in some pools. So people are looking ahead and they need to cover an injury. He's probably 12% owned. He was drafted in quite a few leagues, I think. I'm not 100% sure, but he's a player that if you're looking to solve a shortstop or middle infield position in a 15-team event, that he is, probably the time to pick him up is this week. And probably, people, depending on team need, will go from 10 to 30. And if somebody thinks they got a glaring problem and they think that he could be an upgrade long term, they can maybe push a little harder, especially if they have a lot of, free agent capital to kind of invest. We're almost 2 months into the season. So, is your team in the hunt or not? I did on the screen, I used the ghost town thing as background because my team's been kind of a ghost town. I like some of the players, but I just can't get any of those really big offensive nights where I get the 6 or 7 home runs, maybe 18 to 20 RBIs and kind of push up the standings. So, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs and stuff like that. It's just nothing really kind of happened in the pitching staff. The front end looks pretty good on most of them, but the middle's kind of backed up a little bit on me. So we'll see if that corrects. Really not much. I don't see anything else at shortstop that kind of stands out. It's just, it's finding these guys that are week in advance is, kind of key, but, you got to have a lot of foresight and you got to have, have some help with a guy getting injured or something. But at second base, I'm actually jumped to Cleveland a little bit because I knew that I talked about Martinez and Angel Martinez. It was batting. He batted leadoff today, and he went like over 3. But he is. I can't remember if he started at second base, but he's got 8 games, so he's going to qualify at second base pretty soon. And he's just a player that I think that's going to be a lot better. Doesn't take a lot. Strikeouts are okay. Doesn't take any walks. Kind of a free swinger, but he only got 2 home runs. But his minor league profile was better, so kind of jumping around out of shortstop on you here. But I just got triggered when I'm looking at these players. I already wrote about them on the Sports Illustrated side of the equation, but I think another one of those guys, 6 foot, 200 pounds. He just seems like he should be, kind of a higher profile, and he showed a little bit in 2024 where he had 7 home runs and 215 at bats and 5 steals. That's projected over 450. It'd be like a 17. 12, something like that guy, approach, same thing is still decent. But he's a guy that needs to kind of do stuff. He did hit a home run this week, and he has 6 RBIs in the last 4 games. So not going to cost a lot, and he is owned on quite a few teams. Let me see what ownership is on him. He's a 61% free agent. So I like him as kind of a stash, especially in outfield when you're kind of struggling there. But I could see him, qualify in second and helping teams. But he's a player of interest to me. But I don't necessarily have the roster space to put him on my team either. So kind of flash. So shortstop, kind of buzzed through there already. Brian Hayes, 23% owned, hasn't really got hot, but I think this player should have more power. I mean, 15 home runs a couple years ago, over 494 at bats. I think the year that he had that year, he was really good at the end of the season and helped me in Greg's cut line. I either came in 3rd overall or 5th or 9th or whatever. I had two good runs in that event. I didn't play it this year, which I'm kind of disappointed in, but just got too busy. So, the Brian Hayes is a guy that's, should be better, should steal some bases for a third baseman. But he's not going to cost much because he's not going to really do much, even though his ownership's high, 77%. Cam Smith looks a little bit better recently. His, kind of strikeouts are still a problem, but this week, 8 for 23, 5 for 15 last week, 4 for 14. So 286 3 weeks ago, 333 last week, and this week he's hitting over 333. Doesn't have the home runs. But if you look at another thing, when you look at a guy like that, he was kind of hitting for a low average, and you know he's moved it up a little bit. But when he was around 100 at bats, he had close to 15 runs and 15 RBIs, or not 15. I'm sorry. So he's like 11 or 12. Let me just look at this just to make sure. So it say 23. He probably had 12 or 13 RBIs. So he wasn't really that far off in the runs and RBIs. Just the strikeouts were too much. So if he could have got the strikeout rate under control, most likely he would see a little rise in home runs and the other stuff. So he's a player that's you kind of sit and hold, and he's coming into form. But he's only 9% free agent. He's not going to be on a lot of teams. Vargas, I talked about earlier, is only 2%. So in the 2% leagues, I would think that if somebody at first base, Ben Williamson, not really a guy that hits a lot of home runs, but let's see what he did weekly, 5 for 15. But he hit a home run. I think he hit the home run in his opening game that he played, and just doesn't have a power profile. So he's kind of a dull person for me. Clement talked about. Sosa talked about him. So third base. Sosa, I'm sorry, I'm just making sure I'm what position am I at? Let's see, where is Urias, Rogers. Beatty's still a free agent. He had another home run. Had a good week, 16%. He's still the guy that's not going to command a big bid. Jan Moncada is struggling with names. Thanks, Eddie. You got me thinking about it. So 23% owned, played better the last 2 weeks, has a long history of underperforming and getting hurt. But, so that kind of gets priced into his potential fantasy value. But he should be picked up in all leagues at third base or corner. But, still not a big investment because he does have the injury risk. So Beatty will probably should have a little more, the bid should be a little higher than Moncada. Moncada might be in the 20s, teens to 20s, depending on if he hits another home run today, push him up. But Beatty is a player that should be, should be on a roster in a 15-team league because he's hitting home runs and doing stuff, and he seems like he's progressing. DJ Maleu, nothing as far as production. Couple hits, 3 for 14. No, not much there. Muncy, Junior Ortiz is a guy that people like going into the draft. They really thought he would do something. Started off slow, but he looks like this week 5 for 12. Showed a little spark. Strikeouts have cut down a little bit. It's started off the season. What was he at the beginning of the year? So he's only 27 strikeouts for the year. That's not bad, but 2 home runs, 7 RBIs is just, really crushed team. So another Milwaukee guy that probably played himself out of playing time or got himself more in the platoon, but he played a little bit better recently. So you can give him a shot, and I don't think that he would cost too much because he would have to hit maybe another home run, and people are just not fighting for that type of player other than they're looking for somebody to cover an injury or put in their starting lineup. Mark Vientos is kind of banged up, so that would be good for Beatty. Morel just getting cut. He just doesn't. He's a guy that's got home run power and speed, but just strikes out 48 strikeouts, 119 at bats. Hit 20 home runs last year. If he starts doing stuff, he's going to hurt you in batting average. But he starts hitting home runs. He's a guy that you can put in and catch a flash player for a couple of weeks, and you can dismiss his batting average because he most likely, if he's hitting home runs, he's making better contract, and the other stuff will kind of be helpful. And he qualifies at 3 positions, but at this point, I would think that he would cost less than $10, and he can get enough playing time. Verlander returned from the DL this week, kind of cloudy to kind of think that he would get every day at bats. I wouldn't really fight for him as far as spend a lot of money on him. Yeah, Mayo could be back, but he was struggling at AAA a little bit. So there's really not much at third base. It's just kind of a unique position where the same as first base is just Ortiz might be the guy, and Ortiz and the Durbin guy, the 2 guys from the Brewers at second and third base that that potentially I think Ortiz qualifies at short too. That might give you some stats over the short term and maybe help you, but not a cost a lot of money, even though they did get some respect earlier. Outfield, Tavares hit a couple of home runs this week. He's playing for Seattle after the trade, so I think that he's kind of a double-digit home run guy, and he stole 23 bases last year, I believe. That he has a little more speed, so he can be helpful bottom of the lineup. But probably in that 20-30 range, if depending on team need, and if probably less if you just want to stick a say a 10 to 20 bid on him. But he could be the best available outfielder based on playing time this week as well. Palacio for the White Sox, they're going to get some flyer bids this week because he had a good week. He doesn't have a high major league profile, so kind of if you're bidding on him this week, you're probably a week late and you missed on something. But I wrote on him on the SI thing this week. But I mean, he's just 220 hitter, not a ton of power, 29 years old. Is he going to continue to do what he did this week? I doubt it. But so a couple dollars, you want to spend short money, free agent every league. Good luck. Drew Waters probably playing himself out of playing time. I thought Freeman was an interesting player. He got called back up. People like him earlier in the year. Stolen bases in his last 3 periods, which is only the last 2 after he got hurt or sent down. But he has a little bit of power or speed. Approach wasn't that bad, in 2024. 53 strikeouts over 330 at-bats. It's okay. Close to 10%. No, I guess it would be less than 10% walk rate. Always 28. Yeah, so probably maybe 8 or 9%. But so decent. A guy that should be a little bit better. Playing in Colorado, could surprise in a game. I think that he would be a guy that I would be interested to put on my roster if I need an outfielder for a bridge player for less than $10, and we'll see what happens. Especially if they have home games. History. Nolan Jones is just doing nothing. Canha just doesn't get enough playing time. McNeil doesn't have enough power. Derek Hill is they've had some injuries. I think he stole a base yesterday. So he's a guy that flashed last year. 6 for 13, 2 steals this week. I could see him being a viable bridge player, for the Myers guy's a little banged up in Miami. Let's see. Yeah, so they moved the Stowers guy who's been hot, and the Wegeman guy has played a little bit of outfield, but Hill should get a decent chance in center field. So player that, like I said last year, he just had a little run and he got picked up, but he just in the end the strikeouts and the approach wasn't that good. 55 strikeouts in 172 plate appearances. So really 1 in 3 and about in his at bats, kind of high, and 7 home runs, 6 steals. So doesn't jump off the page, but if you're looking for playing time, he's kind of played, in the last 5 games, he's got 6 hits over the 10, 8, 12 at bats, yeah, and then a couple steals. So just a guy that's just not gonna make a difference. Rojas steals some bases, doesn't get enough playing time. Let's see. There's a couple other names, and it's easy for me to lose track of these because so if a guy's not playing every day. Carlson got called up for Baltimore. Laureano got hurt. Didn't see much. He wasn't really doing too much. And Colton Cowser is a guy that should be up pretty soon. Colton Cowser, he should be a free agent. He was a free agent more last week, but he's probably in the 90s, I would think now. Colton Cowser, no, it's 100% on now. Yeah, so last week got scooped up in all the leagues. So, but that's the guy that's going to get more playing times. And the other player is the outfielder for the Athletics, Denzel Clark. Didn't hit a home run over his first 100 at bats. Showed a little bit of power and speed earlier in his career. Big 6'3", 220 guy, and they sent Blade guy back. But I'm just going to click on this because I just don't want to butcher that part of the equation. So Smith, yeah. So Clark, he had a 7-game hitting streak before he got called up. 10 for 29, 6 runs, 7 RBIs, 1 steal, no home runs over first 100 at bats. He stalled at Double-A between 2022 and 2023. Hit 266, 665 at bats, 129 runs, 25 home runs. Pretty good number. 96 RBIs, 47 steals. So he's probably a 20-30 guy. If he had 550 at bats, but he struck out 29.4% of the time, which could be a major flaw getting in the majors because that strikeout rate will probably push a lot higher. So yeah, it's just there. Fraley's out of rehab assignment. I mentioned Angel Hernandez. Palacios, as I mentioned. Parker Meadows is the guy that's going to be he started a rehab assignment. I think he's played 1 for 5 with a run and RBI, and that's not including last night. Let me just see if he played, see if he's helped them. But really wasn't a Parker Meadows guy before the season, and then he got hurt. So sometimes you get fortunate. So Meadows his next game he went 0 for 3. I definitely was interested in Wallner for Minnesota. I doubt he's a free agent in many 15-team leagues, but 12-teamers, I could see him. So he's 30% owned. So if he's, I shouldn't say, yeah, he should be a guy that should be picked up. And I probably should have wrote about Carson McCusker. Got called up like last Saturday, but the game got like rained out or postponed, so he didn't really get credit for his at bat. So the NFBC, he wasn't in the free agent pool on Sunday, even though he did play on Saturday. So it was kind of a unique situation there. But he will be in the free agent pool. And I think if he was in the free agent pool last week, he would have drew a lot higher bids. And this week he's over 1 and hasn't done anything, and he could get shipped back to minors and he'll draw less. But I'll stick on Wallner before I go back to him because I don't want to thing. So Wallner, when he was at I think he was his first 2 games, he was awesome. But I think I read that they weren't going to call him up right away this week, so to give him a little more playing time in the minors on a rehab. He had a hamstring issue, so let's see. Yeah, he went. Yeah, he didn't play in the he didn't play yesterday, so he was 5 for 9, 4 runs, 2 home runs, 6 RBIs, only 2 strikeouts. But tons of power, free swinger. Was helpful for fantasy teams late last year. 14 home runs, 41 RBIs, over 213 at bats. He had 42 runs. That's a pretty good stats. Even the batting average is okay. He's one of those guys that probably has a high contact batting average. So strikeout rate 80% is, really too high. But when he puts the ball in play, it's well over 400. Puts the ball out of the park. Even stole a base. So in those leagues that he's a 30% owned. So I will be looking to see if he's in there. If I'm short power, I know there's going to be a little bit of batting average risk there, but he's a player. I should have said that what he did in those stats was in 2023, not last year. Last year was a little more at bats, but it was okay for the runs and RBIs with 13-37. But anyways, so if he's in a free agent pool, maybe you can get him in a half week out of him where he gets called up at the end of the week, and you might have to take in his 0 depending on your roster. I would think I haven't really kind of looked at this, but let me just look at Wallner because he might have been picked up in some leagues, so it gives you a little reference. It dropped. All right, so somebody picked him up for 11. It was 5 people who picked him up 11-0, 5, 4, 2, 1. His name's a little more on the radar, so it'd be a little higher. So I would say maybe in the teens or 20s, where he's sitting out there. And like I said, if some teams have power, they might be willing to spend a little bit more, especially if they got $600 or $700 or $800 left. They can kind of take a flyer on him. But like I said, I don't know where he's in this league that I'm looking at. He's on the roster. But as far as McCusker, I'll go back to him. Let me look at the depth chart on the Twins. Let's see how far out. Yeah, 49 minutes. So the Twins are probably a little messy because if Wallner comes back, him and McCusker can't really play center field, but there's a potential one of those guys could shift over to left field, if they played well. That's with Larnach technically covering the DH. But there is a reasonable opportunity for if somebody hits that they could seize that. Like McCusker guy could technically hit his way into more at bats, but he started at AAA, 10 home runs, 36 RBIs, over 137 at bats, hit 350. Last year between AA and AAA, he had success as well. What did he do? He had 461 at bats. He had 20 home runs, 76 RBIs, 8 steals, 149 strikeouts. It's a little higher than you want to see, but he showed a little improvement and he'll have some risk. But he's at age 27. He has kind of a journeyman profile. Really big guy, 6'8", 250. But yeah, like I said, if he was in the free agent pool last week, I think he would have cost some money. Where this week, I think people will just bid a couple dollars for him, and he just really doesn't have that, that ideal window where he's going to get playing time. Let's see. Ronald Acuna, good to see him, do something. I got him on one main event that I really need him to play well, and actually, I don't really need him to just run as much. But I had Josh Lowe on that team, so I got 2 players that might be able to help me out a little bit. But injuries continue to. You get 2 guys back, and you have a couple injuries. I think Jonathan Class A is kind of an intriguing player. He's 23 years old. Really hasn't done much this year, and really in his major league career hasn't got much of an opportunity. But he's a player that, if he got playing time for the Blue Jays, he could really kind of be helpful in stolen bases. And they kind of messy in the left field position. But in let's see here, in the minors, yeah, so he stole 55 bases, 61 bases one year. But anyway, so in the minors, he's got 1430 at bats. He's got 202 steals. He struck out 446 times. I think it was like 26% or so, 26.6, I believe. I think I put him on this article. So Wallner I talked about, Class A, 26.5%. But he's a guy that in the AL only, he could help you out in the standings, and he is a speed out. So he's kind of like a guy in like an NFBC main event that you could put him on your bench and maybe put him in your lineup and see what happens. I don't really think that he has a clear path to everyday at bat, so it's kind of a trickier player. But to at least manage, unless you have if you have no injuries, that he makes it easy to put in your lineup. So let me see outfielders. Just really none of these other guys just not getting a lot of at bats. Yeah, they called up somebody else for Washington because Washington had a couple injuries in the outfield. Let's see here. Yeah, so Haskell, I looked him up. It just didn't really probably. Haskell had 63 at bats at AAA this year, 4 home runs, 24 RBIs, 9 steals. So the RBIs are okay. Steals are all right. Hit 288, but before that, his supporting resume, 271, 2024 at AA, 225, just really doesn't add up to a player that you think that you'd fight for on the waiver wire. 40 home runs, over 1,800 plus at bats. So that's like more than 3 seasons. So it's maybe a 10 home run guy, and maybe could steal 30 bases. So like a kind of a Judy type of player. And if he doesn't play well, he's not going to be in the lineup. Call's a guy that's probably been around a little bit, and with Cruz getting hurt, he could get a bump in playing time. 18 walks, 19 strikeouts are reasonable. And he's hitting 277. Let's see what he was. I would imagine he's probably ownership's pretty low. Yeah, he's 86%. So I think that he would be a guy that you could sneak in for minimal money, and he may surprise. He had a little 9 steals in 375 at bats in 2023, but in the minors, 13 13 steals plus 5 with Washington last year. But he only hit 222. But same thing. The approach was okay. Yeah, so doesn't have any home runs, but I could see him having a game, and maybe he can get lucky, get a week or two out of him. I know Cruz is going to be out for a little while. I think that and Young got hurt as well. So Young's just got more of a center fielder, pure base deal. So he had Cruz has got an oblique strain, which is he was a high draft, like I don't remember 6th or 7th round. People liked him, but he's kind of underperformed, but he has some counting categories, but the batting average 196 kind of a problem. So I don't think did I find any I didn't see any other outfielders that I wrote about. And when I'm skimming through this stuff, even though I'm looking at a 12-teamer, it's the same thing as I'm looking at the percentage owned and who's getting more playing time. So like I said, maybe Call's a guy that's maybe he's the sneaky player for 1 week, and I probably could look at his matchups to see who he's to see if there's some a reason to like him more. Yeah, there's nothing really they're getting lower and stuff, like lower at bats, and they're just really not somebody that stands out. And I'm trying, is there anybody that's injured in here that's could be back? Myers, Carter, I had him on bid last week and have him, but it looks like it's a strains too. So it says that's today's is running and hitting expected to begin a rehab. Well, that's better than expected. I thought I read last week there was a grade 2 strain, which was, I thought he was going to be a while longer. I do have him in the leagues, and I overpaid for him because I thought he had a long-term job, but they got rid of Tavares. So if he was out there at 58%, if he's going to go on a rehab assignment, I think that he would be a player of interest for me, because I've already shoved all in, and why not go after a guy that's you like and you think he has potential. The other outfielder is DeLuca for Tampa Bay, 7% owned. I think he's going on a rehab assignment too. But that was news. Yeah, he's going on a rehab assignment, but he still has to prove himself in the majors. We'll see what happens with him, but not much there. It's just these scraping through these 15-team leagues and looking for help. To get a good player to push you up the standings is really a challenge. So it'd be probably easier to go through the. I'm gonna go back this up and just bring. I didn't really write about too many pitchers in the 12-teamers. Kyle Harrison, I like him if he's in the free agent pool, and I'll look to him just to see. San Francisco, they moved him starting rotation, so Verlander should be back, and that's who he's replacing. But if he pitches well, he could replace Roop, who's actually Landon Roop is actually, the last 2 games have been a lot better for him. He hasn't given a run in back-to-back games, and he's pitched 6 innings in both. He's actually has 4 straight games where he's given up 2 runs or less. But for the season, let's see where he's at, 3.63. His whip's a little bit high, due to probably a little too high on the strikeouts. The walks there. So how many hits? He's given up 55 hits, more hits. So he could replace him, or Verlander could continue to struggle. So Harrison's a guy that's a 37% free agent. He has a type of arm that I think that I would be willing to spend, over like $40, maybe $50 for, if I have like $600 or $700 or something. I do have him in one main event that I picked him up a couple weeks ago for $20 or so. Didn't have him in, but I think that he's a guy that could slide in my starting lineup, be helpful. He pitched 4 innings and gave up a couple runs and didn't walk anybody. But his arm was trending higher, and I might as well just look at him, because I'll say what his stats better if I just go to him. Harrison. So he gave up 2 runs, 5 hits, and 4 strikeouts over 4 innings. His last 2 starts at AAA in late April, he had gave up 1 run, 10 base runners over 11 innings, and 15 strikeouts. Fastball, 94 plus. Was a career best. It's kind of trending higher. He's got a good curveball and changeup. So he faces Miami this week. I think he can get 5 innings. So I think that, but he's not like a guy like you're picking him up and you're thinking, I'm going to buy him for $50 and he can help me move up in the standings, because he might only have a week or 2 and he could stay with San Francisco, but he's not going to kind of maybe have a Birdsong role, and he could actually if Birdsong struggled, who actually pitched good this week, could replace him. So, but I would be interested in him as for sure. Let's see. Let's go. Where is it? I'm just going to go through these ones kind of quick. Darvish, he could be back. Darvish is, I would imagine he is probably owned. Darvish, he's 14% free agent, but he had a rehab and gave up 4 innings. Pitched 4 innings. He gave up 2 runs, 3 base runners, a home run, 4 strikeouts. But that was on the 14th, so we're 11 days out. He only threw 51 pitches, so why didn't he pitch in between? They kind of suggest that he might get activated soon, so I don't know if he's going to be all right. Why skip him? Mike Burrow beat Bubba Chandler to the majors. Looks like he's a decent arm. He first before the season he had a 10-14, 3.61 ERA, 1.22 WHIP on 291 strikeouts over 259 innings. Fastball close to 95 mile an hour. I think he has a pretty good changeup. Struggled in his opening major league debut. He has double starts, not this week, but the following week. That's if he keeps the job and stays in the majors. This year he started off with 39 strikeouts over 30 innings, had a 2.40 ERA, and a 1.0 WHIP, which is pretty enticing. And he pitched a little bit better in his last 4 games. So I think that he is a risk-reward arm. I think I need to see more. I don't think that he's here long term, but if he has success, that could surprise. Colton Gordon is they gave him a couple starts over the last couple of weeks. But they gave him 8 starts. I'm sorry, Houston gave him 2 starts over the past 2 weeks after 8 starts at AAA, and AAA had a 2.55 ERA, 1.21 WHIP, 43 strikeouts over 42.1 innings. With Houston, in the last 2 games, he had to give up 6 runs, 14 base runners, 2 home runs, 9.2 innings with 10 strikeouts, soft tosser, 91 mile an hour fastball, slider, curveball. So he's kind of a guy that's got a chance in a rotation, but he has a little more risk and reward. Jacob Lopez is a guy for the age that would probably be a little more intriguing. They called him up earlier in April and pitched him in relief, but he made a start last week for them and gave up 1 run, 4 base runners with 8 strikeouts over 7 innings. He has a low 90s fastball. I think he's a lefty. He faces the Blue Jays on the road this week, but next week he's at home, I believe, and facing Minnesota and Baltimore, and not necessarily that home's a better place to be pitching if the balls are kind of flying out. But in his career in the minors, 19-17, 2.94 ERA, 463 strikeouts over 364 innings, and the WHIP was okay, 1.13. So, he's a guy that struggled in the majors a little bit for Tampa Bay. Didn't really get much of an opportunity with Tampa, but he shows a little bit in his resume. So this is the kind of type of guy that I call myself a fantasy snob. Like this guy doesn't have like first round pedigree, doesn't have a big fastball, and he gets called up and he does success. But who's to say that he doesn't pitch good for 5 or 6 games in the majors, and you put in your slide him in your lineup, he gets some help, and then he has a bad game, and then you decide to sit him, and he kind of drifts off into the sunset. So player that I won't be looking for. If he was there next week and I had needed a double start, it might be a little different story there. Ryan Nelson's 70% owned, but he pitched okay for the Dodgers. Next week he's got Pirates and Nationals at home, double starts. That would be okay. He faces when he came back and pitched against the Dodgers, he gave up 1 run, 4 base runners, 2 strikeouts over 5 innings, which isn't bad. He threw 71 pitches. So over his last 20 innings, he's got 2.61 ERA, 1.02 WHIP, 18 strikeouts. So I think that he's a decent arm. Probably scooped in more leagues last week, and he's not in many free agent pools. So let's go to the starting rotation just to see, who would be free agent. I can't imagine. Obviously Nelson's got double starts this week. I don't think he's got RotoWire's got Andy Rodriguez coming back at the end of the week. He begins a throwing program at 90 feet. Last week I don't think there's any chance in hell that guy's pitching this week. So, he's got to be throwing more. So Lopez, nothing there. Strider, Sale, Povich, is probably in the free agent some leagues, but he's just not he's too erratic. Red Sox really not much. They got Criswell, who's really kind of a reliever, slated for one of this. He's pitched. His ERA and WHIP are okay, but I guess in the last 3 games they stretch him out a little bit. So last 3 games at AAA, been decent. He pitched 16 innings, 10 hits, 4 walks, 23 strikeouts. So the Red Sox, I could see him. He did okay at times last year. Strikeouts have been better this season, but he did get bombed in the major. So, for a couple dollars, if you wanted to put him in, if he truly is going to get called up, he faces Milwaukee on the road. And then I'm not sure he'll get his second side. I think the Fitz guy for I should stay where I was. Sorry, I don't want to blow the thing, but I think the Fitz guy for the Red Sox is going to start a rehab assignment pretty soon. So he looked like he was a trending arm. Yeah, he's May 20th, so did he pitch? Yeah, he pitched 22nd, so 3 innings at AAA, 4 hits, no walks, 2 strikeouts. Didn't say how many innings pitched, but he was doing pretty good for the Red Sox. So if he was in there in the free agent pool, I would put him on my roster as a guy that could be a rotational double start guy, and then maybe play matchups in a 15-team format. Said his fastball was up, and before the season, and he's just a player that seemed like he was progressing. Probably need to dig into him to see if he's in the pools in my leagues. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't really thought about him. And, sometimes when, like I said, when you're going through, when I do the AL and NL only leagues, and sometimes I kind of fall into these players because I have to look at one more level, and just guys that are getting some innings, and, to see how they progress. Cleveland, not much there. The Ciccone guy, I talked about him last week. I think he was probably picked up in, probably a lot of leagues last week. Ciccone, yeah, he's 7%. He did okay last week. He would definitely get picked up and probably be a little bit more, maybe $20, $30 player this week. I don't care about Chicago, or I don't care if you're pitching for Chicago or Colorado. I'm not even interested due to lack of wins and giving up damage, when you're pitching. The 5th starter is still kind of cloudy for them. I know Mize came back, and I guess, they got Olsen returning next week, which would help them. I'm not 100% sure there, but Montero had one good game, and I'm not too interested in him. Gusto, I mentioned him, facing Tampa Bay. I mean, not Gusto, Gordon. Gusto kind of was a failed double starter last week. Cameron pitched well enough to stay in the rotation even next week, but if Cole Ragans returns as expected, then they have to make a change, and I'm not 100% sure that he'll stick, but I'm not really Angels pitchers, nothing there. Kershaw pitched a little bit better, but the rain, he was shortened to 2 innings. He was a pretty chased after guy in the last week, and he kind of underperformed. Ryan Weathers gets double starts at San Diego and at home against San Francisco. People paid a lot of money for that guy last week, and I think that might be the highest I've seen for a guy that really doesn't have, that great of a resume. But he did pitch another 5 innings with gave up 1 run through 80 pitches and 4 strikeouts, no walks. So we'll see what happens. It could be a good investment, and potentially maybe he's a kind of guy gets traded. Cervelli got called up. It's like 4 innings. I think it was they weren't going to call him up. 2 runs over 4 innings. Home run, 6 base runners, 3 strikeouts. Needs to be stretched out. Logan Henderson isn't going anywhere. The guy's been really good. Quentin Priester is going to should get knocked out. And then the other pitcher for Milwaukee, Mizorowski, he's a guy that continues to pitch well, and he should be in the majors and help that team. But Paddock pitched pretty well. So he's got the return of Paddock he was picked up in a lot of leagues last week, and he would probably not be in any main events this week. I can't imagine that he is 12-teamers, so he would be in some paddock. Yeah, he's 100% owned. So next week will be interesting because now he has double starts. People are trusting him, and does he deliver 2 good games, or does he get banged around and kind of hurt some teams like he did in his opening start when he gave up 9 runs. Really not much at the Mets, Yankees. Yarborough is a guy that I don't know what happened with him, but he had 8 strikeouts. This guy is just a kind of a junk baller. They've kind of stretched him out, 64, 67, 81 pitches. He's given up since moving into the starting rotation. 14 base runners over 14 innings, 12 strikeouts. But he's an arm that's kind of had success in the past. But it's been a lot further back, 2019 and 2018. His ERA was around 4. With pitching meaningful innings, 140 or more. The following season, he was in the strike season. He was much better, but it was only pitched 55 innings. But the last couple of years, he's kind of shifted to the bullpen. In 2024, it was okay. Walks are a little bit up, but so far this year has been pretty good. So another guy that you think that's a fantasy snob, but he pitches for the Yankees who are winning games, score runs. He looks like he's okay. A little uptick in strikeouts, which is surprising, and he is trending higher, whereas ERA is, after the beginning of the year, it is going down. But he's not going to cost a lot of money, $10, $11. Double starts. I think this week would be, what does he have? Double starts against at the Angels and at the Dodgers, so taking on the Dodgers and the Angels, on the road. Yeah, I don't. So if you want to go double starts, I would spend less than $10 and see what happens. But really not much there. I talked about Burrows a little bit. Vasquez, they got Pivetta. Darvish listed here against Miami, which would be favorable. I'm not sure what's going to happen with him. I like the Evans guy, and Miller could be back close, and he has him listed here as on Thursday. So, but I'm not sure. I know that he threw a bullpen session, and I think they'll push him back in the starting rotation, but he needs to be a lot better. They have 7 starts for Tampa Bay, so Boyle still has a chance there. DeGrom, LA, there's really not much out, as far as seeing people, a pitcher of value for starters. That would be interesting. So the last thing would be to sort by game started of the last week. See if I missed anything. Fester, no, I'm sorry, I'm still on Minnesota, so that would be kind of weird. Povich, Patrick Corbin, does he survive today? He pitched all right. So far since being called up, Nicholas at 53%, and he got picked up in a few leagues, but he's started off kind of shaky. The last couple of starts have been better. He's actually given up 1 run or less in 4 of his last 5 starts. So it's kind of corrected some of his early damage. 3.5. So whip and ERA are fine. Strikeouts are going to be a liability. He just doesn't strike out enough batters. But if you can make up some length of innings, I would think that Nicholas is a guy that would be probably not cost a lot, but so he got dropped. Yeah. So last week he went $40 to 11, 33, 23, 21, 5, 13, 5, 10, 7. Pitched a little bit better this week, so that helps, drive his cost a little bit. And then he's going to have at the Orioles, who've struggled, but that's not really a great matchup. And then he faces Kansas City the following week, and then he would have doubles the next week after that. So I would think that if you're willing to start him, I think that I would sit him this week and play him next week, potentially. But he's still a guy that I would only $20 to $30. He does have some risk, but he looks like he's trending in the right direction. So guy there, kind of a guy that doesn't fall in my range in a lot of leagues. Hancock kind of struggled. Priester doesn't belong in the majors. Mitchell Parker struggled again. Burke pitched decent. Hendricks is a bum. He pitched okay last time. Really, Lawler pitched better last week, but yeah. So Trevor Rogers is a guy that people were going to gravitate to this game, and it's sometimes it's like just baseball's such a head scratcher. Like they pitched 6 1/3 innings of 2 hits, no walks, no runs, 5 strikeouts. I feel like I'm talking to Eddie Gillis here. I'm mentioning his name again because he had him on a lot of teams last year or something. I really liked him. But when you look at that, it's like, yeah, that guy should be interested. I'm going to bid on that. But then you look at what he did in the minors, and it just, in his rehab appearances this year, it just didn't match up. And, is it the same, the same pitcher? Was he? Let's see here. Did I mess him up? Sorry, I'm butchering where I'm looking for players here. Rogers, yeah. Did they send him back down? Rogers, they could have, for all I know. Trevor Rogers. Yeah, they sent him back to the minors. So, but they could recall him. But anyway, so like I said, I'm just going to make the point that so people are going to try to, maybe if they are interested, to try to pick him up, sneak him through. But he gave it 12 runs over 13 in the minors. He had six walks, 16 hits. Whip ERA 8.10, 1.68 WHIP, 2 home runs. Like, how does that add up to the guy pitches in the majors and then he has a good game and he gave up 4, 1 run, 3, 4, 2. So he's more of a head scratcher. But I'm not going to get sucked into one guy, he pitches good and they ship him back out. So I guess I was just making the point is that I did at least see his name, and if somebody was interested and wanted me to shut up about him, well, he wasn't really that good to begin with. So, but he could surprise. I mean, he's supposed to be a lot better player, but he's just a guy that just kind of seems like he blows up once in a while. So I think that's about it for today. I don't see anybody else that stands out. Just the pitchers. The next 2 pitchers, I think Yuri Perez is getting closer, and then he'll be up. And then obviously Bubba Chandler, you would think sooner or later we get a chance. But I'll just talk about Yuri Perez to see what I think he made a appearance not too long ago. Let's see. So now he pitched his last game. He had 7 strikeouts in 3 1/3 innings. He had up to 4 innings in his previous one. So now he's pitched in the minors for 4 games. 19 strikeouts in 13 innings. 2 home runs. Too many base runners, 18. But he's progressing. A guy that's had success in the majors. So he's getting closer. Not sure when they're going to call him up, but his last appearance was at AAA after pitching at A-ball, so might need a couple more starts. But he's going to be a guy that people will be very interested soon. And the other pitcher I did write in the minor league report for SI was Burns for was he cool? Yeah, Chase Burns really had a really good run here at. Let's see. They push him up to AA. He's pitched 24 innings, 18 hits, 35 Ks with only 3 walks. I mean, this guy should be, at AAA. He's given up 1 run or less in 5 straight games, but he hasn't pitched over 5 innings. Could be holding back. He has 30 strikeouts over his last 20 innings. There's a lot to like about him. Early round draft pick. Talent and arm, but how quickly will they push him up there? He's got pitched 35 innings so far this year, and we're about more than a third of the way through. So Cincinnati could push him to 110 innings if they wanted to. I don't think I could get the college stats last on the RotoWire, but so he's another interesting arm. So that's all I'm going to talk about today. Sorry I'm not back and forth as just writing on the waiver wire and talking about it. Just real life doing other stuff, multitasking to save a little bit of time. But it also helps me walk through and look at players in, just by writing on the Sports Illustrated side of it for the 12 teamers. At least I've already looked at it and, spent, a good 6 or 7 hours looking at names and trying to think, potentially will they help me? And even if it's a 12 team, these names, some of them will be in a 15 team format. And always pitching is going to be relevant from league to league because it doesn't matter what the league size is. If a guy's going to be a helpful arm, most likely he could have helpful at all different levels. So that's all I have for today, and good luck on the waiver wire.